Hey guys, it's Nick with Braindead, and in this video, we'll be recapping the events of The Exorcist, the scariest movie ever made. Yeah, not really, but it is one of the best movies ever made, and that is my actual opinion now. Now, I didn't actually sit down to watch this movie for the first time until I was in my early 20s, so pretty late in life. And even then, I thought it was just a pretty good movie, didn't really get all the buzz for it. Cut to now, after going through it in depth, and it's actually one of my favorite movies of all time now, like definitely top 5. And I suppose I should say that I'm referring to the extended director's version you've never seen, whatever the hell you want to call it, because that's the version that I know best, and I'm sure a lot of you know best, and it's also the one I'll be covering in this video, so may as well get used to it. But at this point, I don't really have much else to say about it. It's a masterpiece, right? So I guess let's just get into it. The movie opens in sunny northern Iraq, where the archaeologically inclined Father Marin is made aware that something has been found. He wanders over to the site of the findings, and there looks to be a sort of Christian pendant as well as a little demon head. This is actually a statuette of the demon Pazuzu, the one that will, spoilers, come to possess Regan later in the film. However, that's not really ever gone over in this movie. It's only really explained in Exorcist 2: The Heretic, which hopefully I'll never have to cover. That movie is so dumb. Don't make me cover that one, please. It's really stupid. Anyway, Marin takes his new trinkets and travels to a temple where they have a full-sized Pazuzu statue. The good father stares it down, and we get this awesome wide shot that foreshadows their inevitable standoff. Out of the desert and into the States, specifically Washington, D.C., we meet Chris McNeil, a loving mother and actress whose daughter, Regan, is probably already possessed by a demon. Exhibit A in the case for possession being the sound of rats up in their attic. Exhibit B, a spirit board. Something that, in the 70s, wasn't taken as seriously as it is today. I wonder if there is a reason for that. Regan tells her mother that she's been talking to a spirit called Captain Howdy. However, when they try to contact him, he doesn't seem to want to communicate. Rude. As Regan gets tucked into bed, they discuss what she might want to do for her birthday that's coming up soon. They eventually land on sightseeing, since they're only going to be in Washington temporarily, Regan mentioning that her mom could bring Mr. Dennings if she'd like. Burke Dennings, that is, the director of the film Chris is starring in, and it seems as though they've taken a liking to each other. But Chris says that he's just a friend, and probably won't be replacing Regan's father. Speaking of the deadbeat, a few days later, Chris screams at the telephone operator. The fuck is that? Chris screams at the operator because they can't get through to Regan's father, who didn't even bother to call on their daughter's birthday. Later that night, Chris wakes up to find Regan in her bed, who says that she couldn't sleep because her bed was shaking. Going to check it out, Chris hears the rats again, this time taking it upon herself to see what's up with that.
What's up with that? What's up with that?
But only finds empty traps and pyrotechnics. And while all of that is happening, we also meet Father Damien Karras, a Jesuit priest who seems to be losing his faith.
I think I've lost my faith, Tom.
See? As he goes to visit his mother in New York, Karras runs into a homeless man who begs him for money, saying,
I'm a Catholic.
Karras all but ignores the man, focused on his own struggles. He gets to his mother's apartment that seems to be located in that hellish landscape from Beau is Afraid, and helps her wrap up her injured leg, damn near begging her to move somewhere else. The stubborn old woman refuses, as she is a stubborn old woman. Father Karras leaves while his mother sleeps, leaving some money on her nightstand that he probably could have given to that homeless man. Cutting to a doctor's office, Regan is going in for a series of tests, all of which has the doctors conclude that Regan cusses like a sailor.
Fuck!
She advised me to keep my fingers away from her. Goddamn.
I love how she kind of laughs at that. But seriously, the doctors believe it to be a disorder of the nerves and prescribes Reagan Ritalin, saying that they should wait a few weeks before taking any more measures. Later at the McNeil house, there's a party going on and Mr. Dennings is wasted, talking about pubic hairs in his drink that aren't his, as if that would matter, and accusing Carl, the McNeil's Swiss housekeeper, of being a Nazi. Sorry, it's kind of funny. It's not so funny to Carl, though, who gets rough with the drunkard, leading to Dennings being vacated from the premises. Attempting to save the night with some music, Father Joe Dyer hops on the keys and sings "Down on Toity Toid and Toid." I said that right. The fun is cut short, though, when Reagan makes her way down, looks at one of the party guests and says,
"You're gonna die up there."
What the fuck?
that particular guest being an astronaut who was about to be launched into space. And for those who may not know, this character actually does come back in another movie called The Ninth Configuration, a movie that William Peter Blatty directed and considered a true sequel to The Exorcist. Now, if you want to believe that or not, I think that's really up to you, but it has been confirmed that Billy Cutler from The Ninth Configuration is this character. Also, you should see The Ninth Configuration if you've never seen it before. Fantastic movie, 9 out of 10. Reagan pisses on the floor and goes up for a bath. Asking her daughter why she would say something like that, Chris is met with eerie silence. She tucks Reagan in, then, as she goes back downstairs, hears Reagan crying out for help. She rushes back to her daughter's room, seeing the bed shaking violently, even when she herself climbs on. But, you know, still could be rats. The next day, Reagan is even worse than before, going back in to see the doctors, but spitting in their faces when they try to help. They now believe there may be something wrong with Reagan's temporal lobe. The good news is that they should be able to alleviate the issue if they can see exactly where it is. After undergoing an excruciating set of tests, they send the McNeils home to look over the results and find nothing.
Seemed to be normal.
That's when the doctors get a call from Mrs. McNeil saying they need them to come over right away. Once they arrive, they find Reagan thrashing around on the bed, eventually going full demon, requiring the medical professionals to sedate her. They still believe it could be the temporal lobe thing, which Chris and us know is a bunch of hooey. And when she suggests so-called split personality disorder, hinting that she would like to see a psychiatrist, Dr. Tanny describes psychiatry in a way I feel like most medical professionals would describe exorcisms.
Now I know the temptation to leap to psychiatry, but any reasonable psychiatrist would exhaust the somatic possibilities first.
I find that interesting. They bring Reagan in for more tests that don't seem any less torturous than the last, finding once again that everything... Give it to me again, Blair?
Seemed to be normal.
It's only now that Dr. Klein offers up psychiatry as a possible avenue. Arriving home, Chris finds no sign of her babysitter, and when she goes to check on Reagan upstairs, sees that her window is open and the room is freezing. Just then, Sharon, the babysitter, gets back and states that she went to go pick up Reagan's medication and left Burke as the backup sitter. You know, the alcoholic.
I should have known better. I'm sorry.
I guess you should have.
Also just then, another friend of Chris's comes by to give her some terrible news. It turns out that Burke had fallen to his death right outside their house. From the sounds of it, he drunkenly fell down a long length of steps and broke his neck. Elsewhere, Father Karras is visited by a homicide detective who spills that he has a hunch that the Dennings death weren't no accident. As it turns out, Burke's head was turned completely around, something that would be fairly unlikely if he had simply just fallen down the stairs. That, paired with an earlier incident where a holy statue was desecrated, the detective, William William Kinderman, believes there may be a cultist running around. He then inquires if Karras knows of anyone who may be a little completely fucked in the head. Enough so that they might say, desecrate a holy statue and murder a man in exceptionally ritualistic ways, maybe? But Karras doesn't actually know anyone like that, so it gets dropped. Back with the McNeils, and after another set of tests, the doctors now think that Reagan may have an extremely rare disorder that presents itself as a sort of pseudo-possession, then suggesting that they seek out an exorcist. But like, you know, for the funny, more than anything. Chris takes Reagan back home, lying her down and finding a cross under her pillow. As she confronts her subordinates about the crucifix, Detective Kinderman shows up to question her about Dennings. Now, before moving on, I found that apparently it was Carl who put that crucifix under the pillow. Although no one comes clean about it in the film, it was confirmed by William Blatty that it was Carl, as he's a Catholic. So there you go, for anyone who was wondering. So Kinderman fills Chris in on the improbable state Burke's body was in, and figures that he must have fallen from Reagan's window, or rather, was pushed. He doesn't outright accuse Reagan of anything, only asks Chris to question her when she feels up to it, and leaves. Running up the stairs, Chris finds her daughter stabbing her own private parts with the crucifix, yelling,
Fuck Jesus! Fuck you! Please, fuck you!
The demon throws Chris across the room, blocks the door with a chair, and as she tries to leave, Reagan's head spins completely around, possibly much like the way Burke's body was found. And speaking of Burke, he speaks through Reagan.
Do you know what she did? Your daughter?
Having had enough of her daughter's foul mouth, Chris seeks out the help of Father Karras. She explains her situation, flat out begging for his help as they've exhausted all other possibilities. He eventually agrees to at least see Reagan and stops by the house. He's met by a
child. No.
young, grotesque-looking girl strapped to the bed for her own and everyone else's safety. Of course, he's skeptical that she's possessed, but that skepticism begins to fade after Reagan imitates the homeless man from before. She also mentions that his mother is in here with us. At this point, Karras' mother had passed away, blaming her son for her poor health condition right before she did.
Why you did this to me, Demi?
Seems a little unfair in my opinion. Still clinging on to his skepticism, he asks what his mother's maiden name was, getting projectile vomit spewed into his face and mouth. Chris cleans his clothes for him, and the next night he comes back with a tape recorder ready to capture any potential evil languages Demon Reagan may be speaking. She remarks that it's an excellent day for an exorcism, saying that it would bring them closer together.
You and Reagan. You and us.
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
As Father Karras begins recording, he sprinkles holy water on the girl, to which she starts screaming in pain, also speaking a very odd language. He later reveals to Chris that the water was just regular old unblessed tap water, and the fact that Reagan reacted to it is a point against possession. However, he then takes his recordings to a language expert who says the odd language was regular old English, but in reverse. So yeah, how does that feel, Karras? Being tricked? Feels bad, huh? Yeah, fuck you. When played backwards, he hears the demon voice saying, "Fear the priest, I am no one," and Marin, as in Father Marin. Getting a call from the McNeil residence, Karras makes his way over, where Sharon meets him in secret. She shows him something that she doesn't want Chris to see.
A child. No.
The words, "help me," manifesting before his eyes in the form of scratches on Reagan's body. Now, mostly convinced an exorcism could help, Karras goes to his higher-ups and requests their permission. They allow it, and figure it would be best if another priest was present, one with experience, with insight. with chutzpah. Obviously, they decide on Father Marin, who is back in the States writing a book. Marin arrives at the McNeil house, where I'm gonna show the shot. Of course I'm gonna show the shot. Let's go! Heck yeah. Marin meets with Karis and gives him a list of things to gather that they'll need for the exorcism. Once he gets back with the supplies, the priests begin the ritual.
Stick your cock up her ass, cocksucker.
Reagan spits that green goo in Marin's face, but like the baller he is, Marin don't flinch, wiping off his glasses and continuing. As they say their prayers, the bed begins to inexplicably lift, throwing Father Karis off, needing to be brought back by Marin. The cabinets in the room start going wild, and Father Marin tries casting out the demon, to which it responds by twisting Reagan's head completely around.
Amen.
Then, as if that wasn't enough, Reagan's straps come loose, allowing her body to slowly float up to the ceiling. The fathers grab their holy water and chant, "The power of Christ compels you."
It's not that compelling.
Over and over again until she starts to come back down. Once at the bottom, Karis takes what's left of the restraints and ties her up as much as he can. Reagan don't like that though, so she bonks Karis and flings both priests across the room, also showing a vision of herself alongside the Pazuzu statue, confirming who or what is taking control of her. They're able to pacify her with more prayers and decide to take a break before they continue. And while Marin takes his heart medication, Karis goes back into the room alone and hears his mother's voice emitting from the girl. She blames him for her suffering, repeating his mother's hurtful words.
Why you do this to me?
As he yells, "You're not my mother," Marin comes back, tells Damien to leave, and resumes the exorcism on his own. Downstairs, Chris inquires about the status of her daughter, asking if she's going to die. Karis tells her not a chance in hell, and he heads back upstairs. He finds Father Marin toppled over dead, Reagan laughing to herself with glee. This enrages Karis, who attacks the girl, likely trying to kill her. But he pulls himself together for a moment and commands the demon to take him instead, inviting it into his body. It very much obliges, and we see the demon face that had once covered Reagan's now masking Father Karis. Pazuzu then tries to force Damien to kill Reagan, but he's able to regain control long enough to jump out of her window, sacrificing himself to save her. A crowd forms around Karis at the bottom of the stairs, including Father Dyer, who administers Damien his last rites. Weeks later, the McNeils are moving out, Chris mentioning that Reagan doesn't remember anything about being possessed and murdering a few people and cursing a bunch.
You son of a bitch! You piece of shit! You fucking goddamn fucker!
Father Dyer swings by to say his farewells, and Chris tries to give him the pendant from before. It had been around Father Karis's neck right up until Reagan ripped it off and allowed the demon to enter his body. Dyer gives it back though, possibly because he feels that they would need it more than him. Wonder why. As they drive off, Dyer finds Kinderman attempting to say his goodbyes, informing the detective that he just missed them. Kinderman asks if Dyer would like to see a film with him, something he also asked Father Karis earlier, but priests seem to think alike, as they both give the same answer.
I've seen it.
The movie ends with the two walking off to grab lunch, signaling the beginning of their friendship that would later be further explored in Exorcist 3. Alright, thank you so much for watching this recap. If you made it this far, it'd be awesome if you could subscribe. You can go ahead and forget I ever existed afterwards. I appreciate it all the same. But anyway, I think this is where I'm ignoring that. But this is where I'm going to start doing my review type stuff. I mean, like at the end of these videos instead of the beginning. I just really like the more improvised, I take down a couple notes and then elaborate on them here just off script. So yeah, I genuinely do love this movie so much. It's so good. It almost flawless, like damn near flawless. There's like one thing that I'll get into in a little bit here that I can think of that I'm like, I don't like that. You know, it's just one of those movies where the more I watched it, the more stuff that I started to notice. And with those kinds of movies, it shows the timelessness of them. Because, you know, there's plenty of movies right now. You watch it once and you're done. There's nothing else to know or glean from it at all. Whereas this one, after like the third time I watched it, I was still noticing and realizing things about the film. Like all the thought and detail that they put into it is just amazing. And yeah, like I said, I wrote down a couple things that just like little things about the movie that are details that I appreciated a lot. And one of the first things that I saw that I noticed and I was like, that's just so cool, is the cinematography in that scene where Kinderman is talking to Chris about Burke's death. So as that scene plays out, Kinderman is sitting there and he's saying things that are very incriminating to Reagan, like, you know, he fell from your daughter's window probably, and you're saying your daughter was the only one home. And as he's saying those kinds of things, the camera is slowly getting closer and closer to him, and it gives this impression that he's closing in on the truth almost, making it super claustrophobic. And like at a certain point I was like, wait, why am I uncomfortable now? And I realized it's because Kinderman's right in my fucking face. Like this. Is this comfortable for you? No. And then he flips it and he starts saying things that you'd think, oh, he doesn't think Reagan did it. He's like, oh, are you sure your babysitter wasn't here? Or were you expecting a package? Was anybody else expecting people? Anyone else who could have been here who could have done this? And as he's saying things like that, the camera is slowly backing out and it's starting to give you some room, some space to breathe, because it's like, oh, he's not closing in. Okay, good. And another thing that I don't think gets talked about enough is the fact that Chris is an actress, and it seems like this little tiny thing that doesn't really matter to the story, but I think it does. Like, this is a legit famous, probably rich actress, and she can't help her daughter. And it just really adds to the fact that the situation is completely hopeless. And that's scary. That's a scary, scary thought, that this person who should have no problem getting the help that they need can't find it anywhere, no matter what they do, no matter how hard they try, no matter how much money they have to spend. In the end, the only thing that helps them is God, right? It's a good message for Christians, at least. I'm not Christian, just putting that out there. But for this movie, for the message that they're going for, what they're trying to say, it's pretty perfect. But there is something I dislike about this movie, and that's with that subliminal messaging. Not like this one. There's like plenty of this subliminal messaging, even though it's not really subliminal messaging. It's, you know, that flash it on the, it's on the screen too long to be subliminal. But there's that particular one where Chris comes home and the lights flicker, the part where she can't find the babysitter anywhere. The lights flicker and that face shows up just like in the kitchen, like over the sink or whatever. That one's stupid. That's a dumb one to put. It serves no purpose. It doesn't need to be there. It's a dumb placement for it. It's stupid. I don't like that one at all. It really just, it ruins the whole fucking movie for me. This movie's, you know, 2 out of 10. For the other two things, you know, they get a point. But this thing, I can't get over it. But yeah, that's all I have to say for now. Thank you guys again so much for watching. And if you want more of me, I got plenty of other content on this channel, and I also have a streaming channel where I do live stream gaming, and you can also follow me everywhere at Braindead Horror. Otherwise, thank you so much for hanging out, and I'll see you guys again real soon.